You guys ready?
Sure.
Alex, you sound more sleepy by the minute.
I'm tired and I still have to do this fucking assignment.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. Well, action. Okay, I'm gonna get started soon. All right. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the InkGuild podcast. I am Dean, joined today by Alex and Gabe. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Cool. Today we're going to be talking about the Mary Sue trope, and that is a pretty, I guess, in.
Hello.
Oh my god. All
I have
right.
some concerns.
Yeah. All right. So the Mary Sue trope is like it's kind of hard to really pinpoint what the Mary Sue trope is for those who aren't familiar with it, or for those who like don't know when that trope is happening. But basically, the Mary Sue trope is the perfect protagonist, basically. And I know I may be kind of butchering it with just that first sentence, but basically the Mary Sue trope um pretty much is like the perfect character. They like to discuss,
Perfect.
yeah, like to discuss some of the qualities that you can see in a Mary Sue. Typically they would be a woman, a very beautiful woman at that. They're almost always the hero. Um, they have very zero flaws. They're beloved by pretty much everyone. Um, And I think the biggest sticking point is that the it seems like the entire universe or like the entire universe of or around the Mary Sue gravitates solely around that character. This is, I guess it's kind of reminiscent of the chosen one trope because um the chosen one almost always is like destined to save the world and whatnot. But with the Mary Sue, there's a lot behind that name that we'll eventually get into. But yeah, to open up the discussion, actually, what do you guys kind of think on the Mary Sue trope?
I think right off the bat with your description, I would replace the perfect character with a flawless character because I think that's a better descriptor.
Mm,
Just
yeah, that is
because
better. Yeah.
when you say a character is perfect, generally that means you like them, in my opinion. And in my experience, Mary Sue characters are not well liked because they're like they're really boring characters usually. They don't do anything except have everyone tell them how perfect they are all the time.
hmm Yeah, flawless is definitely the best way to put it. Because you're right. Like we have our own definition of perfect characters, but I think when a character is too perfect, then
Or too perfect would be another good way to put it instead of just perfect.
hmm Gabe, how about you? What are your initial thoughts on the Mary Sue?
Um, I would say, yeah, you more or less got it. I'd say Mary Sue is a character who the universe of the fiction sort of warps around, and they suck the life out of potential other arcs in for other characters by virtue of doing everything. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the biggest point that like I touched on earlier on how the universe basically gravitates around this character. And I think in comparison to a chosen one, at least with the chosen one early and keep in mind that I could be wrong about this, but with the chosen one trope, it's almost always that um they may be the one destined to save the world and whatnot, but a lot of Chosen One stories, the world still kind of lives and breathes around them to some degree. And to a Mary Sue, like everything is solely focused on that character, like the characters that they meet, the worlds that they interact in, um, the weapons they use, the conversations they have with people. It's all solely focused back on the Mary Sue. Meanwhile, with the Chosen One, you can have, it's more or less the same thing. Like you can have side characters or something talking with like with the Chosen One, but at least it doesn't feel forced, in my opinion. And it's kind of hard to compare the two, but yeah.
I don't know if I would say a chosen one like runs the risk of being a Mary Sue. I think because I think there's a lot of I think there's a I think mm, I don't know. I feel like there's more to it. 'Cause I feel like a chosen one stereotype is like you could argue the universe like
Does revolve around them?
yeah, revolves around them by nature of there being like a cosmic chosen one, but I don't know if they don't automatically like I think a characteristic of Mary Sue is more in like the supporting characters than the character themselves, because usually what you see is they'll be surrounded by a cast of supporting characters, but the supporting characters don't really have anything to do because the protagonist will is like, oh, we need an archer and a lockpicker and a strong man and and all these things, and then so in a organic story, you might have a group of characters who all possess individual skills that complement each other, and you can have sort of dynamic going on. But in a story with a Mary Sue protagonist, you would just have the Mary Sue do everything while everyone around them goes, "Wow, you're the greatest, sexiest, coolest, awesomest dude I've ever fucking seen.
Mm-hmm.
You're so sick." And then that's it. That's all she wrote. You got that's all the character dynamic.
Yeah.
It's also Mary Sue characters are pretty sure that, like the term originated in like self-insert fan fiction too, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so Mary Sue characters are often literally self-inserts of like the storyteller. And it's like the storyteller trying to be like, oh, I want to be really cool and powerful and I want everyone to love me, so I'm going to be this really cool character, which leads to a character that the audience is supposed to be able to project onto,
Yeah.
and leaves the character with no personality traits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I guess, like, if it's supposed to be a self-insert thing, I guess that's fine if you're keeping that story to yourself.
Well, if it's in fan fiction, I think it's fine in general.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, if you're into that sort of thing when it comes to fan fiction, I'm personally not, but I mean, people like what they like.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like people write fan fiction for fun if they want to. I feel like if someone's writing a fanfic and they want to write like a story where they basically a version of themselves with their name misspelled hops into uh uh I don't know Dragon Ball, and they get to hang out with Goku, and Goku gets to compliment them on their sick muscles, and they get to hang out with Android 21, and Android 21 flirts with them, and they got all that stuff. Like it's fun wish fulfillment stuff
Yeah.
in fan fiction form.
Yeah, but then as
It's
soon as it like not like I don't think we should necessarily hold like different forms of media to like different standards, because I still think fan fiction is valid, and I think it's like a good way for people to explore their things, but if you're like publishing a story and like asking for money for it, like
yeah.
fix
Yeah.
up that self-insert character, make them a real character, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was touching on that earlier on how on a smaller scale, like if you're just kind of sharing it with friends and whatever, or like people within a respective fandom, then yeah, I don't see what's wrong with writing a perfect version of yourself. But at the same time, like when suddenly that becomes a lot bigger, or when your story is actually starting to gain more traction and more eyes, it's super imperative, I personally agree, to make that character a character and not just a perfect version of you, because then
Yeah,
ultimately, ultimately you might just get a Mary Sue, at or at the very least like a very boring protagonist. um
like I definitely don't I do. I'm not gonna diss fanfic, but I know my brain I thinks of like if I read Shadow over Arendelle and Elsa is a Mary Sue in that
Man, I love.
I will have I will have less like of a guttural response to that than if like I paid I don't know 17 if I paid $17 for like a book and I got it and the book is Shadow over Arendelle, then I might be like a little bit like, come on, man.
Okay, I want to entertain that side tangent for just a second. I've been trying to look.
Is there a new chapter?
Yeah, I've been trying to look for a new chapter recently, and there still isn't anything, and I'm sad.
God.
There hasn't been any updates. Like the first chapter was uploaded in like July, and it has not updated since.
Bruh,
Ugh, heartbreaking.
come on. I want to see thing. I want to see Shadow and Elsa's relationship like develop. And for those things,
Berserk has had 2 chapters since Shadow over Arendelle started.
for those who aren't familiar with what Shadow over an Arendelle is, you're
Which no
not gonna
one's
find.
going to
Yeah,
be.
you're not gonna find out because we have to move on now. Uh, so I had listed briefly earlier some of the tropes associated with a Mary Sue, and I guess like let's each go around listing maybe one of them that we kind of know of and talk about them in length. Um, so for me, the one trope that I can most commonly associate a Mary Sue trope or the Mary Sue trope to is the zero flaws thing, and obviously there's a lot of tropes out there, and I'll get your guys' input on it in a second. But yeah, I think having an absolutely flawless character has almost always bugged me. And granted, granted, this is someone who has written pretty perfect characters before, but there's always been to some degree a flaw to them. Um, and it's not just like a very minute flaw either. Like it's not like a physical scar that makes them, I guess, like physically flawed, but even then it's just like something to their appearance, right? Like Mary Sue's typically are absolutely completely flawless. Like they don't at any point experience any kind of anxiety because they're almost always confident. They don't experience any kind of hardship because they were either kind of dropped off in the middle of nowhere, um or they had, I don't want to say their parents killed off, but like their whole origin story is kind of a mystery from the beginning anyway, so it can't explain, or there's no interesting backstory or relatable backstory to tap into for some kind of hardship. Um, I guess furthermore, there's no. I guess in general, actually, there's just no interest. Like or at least I have come to appreciate a lot of flaws in characters. Like, if nothing else, they'd be a very helpful story device because it shows, it's something that you could tap into, like I said, for a dramatic moment or maybe like a key character development for a book or a series or whatever. But when you don't have that, like when you don't have a character flaw to show off or to like show, then that ultimately doesn't engage a reader because all we all in our own ways have things that don't make us perfect people. And I've always said that, perfect people shouldn't exist, really, because
Perfect people can't exist. It's impossible.
exactly, they shouldn't. But there's a lot of things that we sympathize over and we bond over, such as anxieties, worries, you know, sometimes similar mental health conditions that we confide in that, and sudden and projecting, or I don't want to say projecting, but like sympathizing that with a character that you can relate to on that if handled well, like you're gonna have a lot of people adoring your character, because then it's, it shows the hardship that they've gone through, and it shows just how much they're overcoming, and that is an inspiring story, obviously. But when you have no flaws, then who exactly is that character for, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you
Yeah,
guys think on
actually,
characters having zero, or what do you think on the Mary Sue trope having zero flaws?
Well, I mean, first, any young writers listening, um, pro tip: sexy flaws do not count as flaws.
Seconded.
You cannot make your character be like, oh, I'm edgy and I have a problem with authority. That's not a character flaw.
Mm-hmm. You can't give them, scars on their face, or like, you know, yeah, you can't give them scars or blemishes on their face, or like cool tattoos
Or
and
like,
call that a physical, or yeah, physical flaw.
ooh, he has an attitude. That's a flaw. That's a
Yeah,
trait.
like I think if you're not gonna give a backstory behind that kind of brashness anyway, then like don't include it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alex, how
yeah.
about you? What do you think on?
Also, yeah, I was gonna say, when you were talking about that, I think that having like a flawless protagonist from a storytelling point is also super disadvantageous. Is that a word?
Is that a word?
I don't know.
This.
All right, here on the InkGuild
Yeah.
podcast, we just make up a bunch of words that you guys can use whenever you want.
I'm
We're English
really
majors. What's
tired.
a dictionary?
Okay. Um, anyway, but it really holds back writing. I mean, how many times have you guys read something or watched something and seen a character do something really stupid or misunderstand something and like yelled at them for it? When your character is supposed to be flawless and they make those kinds of mistakes, it's like 10 times more frustrating. Like if you're like, oh, my character's really smart, and is all and super empathetic and always like understands people and is really insightful, and then someone like lies to them and tricks them into doing something, that's super frustrating. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you have a character that has a defining like character flaw of trusting too easily or something, and they get lied to, that's using their flaw in the story to like propel the story forward.
Mm-hmm.
But when your
Mm-hmm.
character is supposed to be really good at reading people and like really insightful, and someone lies to them and they just believe it without questioning it, it makes them look really stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And that,
it makes that whole
yeah,
scene seem very forced.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it feels like you're forcing stuff for
Like
plot convenience.
if a character fucks up by virtue of their established flaws, then it's like it adds to the intensity. Because I'm like, oh man, I that's something that I can realistically expect the character to do, and now I'm worried for them. But if it's just if it just comes out of nowhere that this character suddenly does some smooth brain shit when they've never done that before, it's very irritating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think especially if it isn't explained either. If
yeah,
it's all kind of left to our imagination, then it's kind of boring in that regard. Or it's boring. It's boring to say the least, and it's just downright inexcusable, really.
I think the biggest excuse of that is the Daenerys kind of forgot meme.
Yeah. All right. Alex, how about you? Is there a particular Mary Sue attribute that you want to touch on, or?
characters around them always praise them for everything. Um, and like, yeah, it's just like the character is constantly surrounded by these people who are like, "Oh wow, you're so amazing. You can do no wrong." Um, and like the Mary Sue can do no wrong apparently, and that just leaves like a whole bunch of characters that have nothing to do in the story except praise Mary Sue, um, which is also really frustrating because, ensemble casts are fun and you cannot carry a whole story, especially like, well, like, I mean, depending on what it is, but if you're talking like a movie, if you're talking like a novel, if you're talking like a TV show, you cannot carry a whole story on one single person.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. Um, And so having just all the side characters be there to do nothing but praise the Mary Sue is also really irritating.
It's pretty
Yeah.
cringe, man.
Hmm?
It's pretty cringe.
Yeah.
I don't want to like jump the gun on the elephant in the room, but that was a big problem with me with the most recent Star Wars movie. Um, I don't want to get into the Force Awakens just yet. I'm assuming we're saving that for like a later time.
Oh yeah.
But it was definitely a an issue for me because you had this established ensemble cast of side characters. You had Finn and Poe and Rose and like all like the classic characters and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then like they still more or less had stuff to do in the other movies, but it really felt like in the most recent movie they had literally nothing to do. Like I don't even remember if Rose was in the movie. Finn felt like almost comedically uh like side trailed. I don't think Poe had anything to do in the movie. It didn't feel like any of the characters had anything to do in the movie. They were just sort of there to exist in a story that wasn't theirs anymore.
Yeah. Suddenly it was all about Rey. And you're
Kylo Ren.
yeah, and you're right.
Yeah.
Like we'll really get more in depth into that in a minute, but Gabe, how about you? Is there
Actually, on that note, I know I bring this up literally every single episode, but that was one of my problems
this
in
there?
Throne of
is it
Glass.
Throne of Glass?
Sarah J. Maas button.
if nothing else, if she actually is listening to these, or if she eventually does end up listening to these, she must be so annoyed that we're still talking about her book.
She's probably my biggest fan right now. Shit.
Okay, Alex, what is
What is my problem with it? It was Aelin was always like she was the most infamous assassin in the land at the age of 16, and then she was like, and then you find out she's got all these special snowflake superpowers, and she does all this really cool stuff, and we don't even get to see half of the cool stuff she does, and everyone's always just like, wow, Aelin, you're amazing. Like,
yeah?
and like all the other like how many characters have died for her at this point, and how many characters are uh, like indebted to her in some way.
So
Like
wait, like in the first book, they introduce her, and she's already like an established celebrity assassin in this universe.
Mm-hmm.
yes, she was the most like well-known assassin in the country at the age of 16, and listen, I'm not like, some teenage girls are amazing,
Mm-hmm.
but like
But
you're
when
telling me
you're
there's no other assassins in a country that apparently has a lot of assassins. There's like an assassin school in like the next country over,
yeah,
and you're telling me that she's the most well-known famous assassin in the whole country at the age of 16.
Well, and like what's fucked up about that is that I'm not immediately turned off by the idea of a 16-year-old being like the top assassin in this universe.
Yeah,
But like to me,
but then she's also secretly a princess and secretly a fairy with like the most magic of all of the fairies,
yeah,
and like
it
it keeps
started, yeah,
building.
like
well,
go ahead, Gabe.
what I was gonna say was like if you have that premise, I feel like you sort of struck narrative gold with that. Like because if you wrote the story from like a different way of looking at it, if you said, all right, so I'm gonna tell the story about a teenager who is in the act of becoming the number one ranked assassin, that's already just saying that sounds far more compelling than this teenager who already at the start of the story is the number one assassin in the world.
Yeah, see the thing
Oh,
is then
yeah.
because the prequel novella collection, The Assassin's Blade, um the
Oh,
thing
dude,
is
that
with
was fuck
that book,
too. Did I just fuck my own point with a book that already exists?
see, but the thing is in that book she is still an established nation famous assassin. There's no
Yeah.
really like it still shows her fucking up, but at that point she's still absolutely like renowned as, Adderland's assassin at that point.
Well, 'cause it's like
there's no training sequences, there's no like, how did Like, how did
There's no competition with other people who
yeah,
might think that a 16-year-old is not fit to be the number one assassin or not fit to be, you know, an assassin in general as a child.
yeah, they're basically like a lot of them are just content with it at this point.
That's not like the idea of a child getting involved in in like a global assassin competition to be the world's greatest assassin. In my head, that sounds a lot more compelling than a teenager is at the beginning of the story already a well-respected member of the assassin community.
Hmm.
I mean, isn't that basically just the plot of Hunter x Hunter?
In Hunter x Hunter, his dad is the number one,
Yeah, but then
not the
and
number
then
one.
he's like well-known hunter, and then Gon is trying to become a hunter like him.
Oh, you mean like yeah, exactly, yeah. Like Hunter x Hunter is basically like Gon's rise as like a small little child to the top rank of this dangerous group of mercenaries, and it's
Yeah, so what you're saying that a better version of Throne of Glass would be is Hunter x Hunter.
well, not
That's
I
it.
wasn't thinking Hunter x Hunter. I in my head actually the comparison I was going to make was like My Hero. Like, could you imagine how much less compelling My Hero Academia would be if the plot was that at the beginning of the story Deku was like already the number one hero?
Oh yeah, that would take this like we
He
can
would take
get
it right. He would take you right out.
yeah, it'd take the momentum out of the race already, I guess.
Yeah,
Like, can
But
you?
that's why
Yeah.
my solution to Throne of Glass is make Aelin not the main character.
Hmm.
yeah, we should make that a campaign at some point. Anyway, okay, so Gabe, we can go about this one of two ways for your thing. So either we can go straight into the star or into talking about Ray, or you can bring up um or you can bring up a characteristic of the Mary Sue that you think is worth talking about, and then we can go into the Ray debate.
I don't think I can think of anything else that hasn't been brought up. We've talked about the universe warps around them, and everyone seems to like and admire them immediately upon meeting them, and they vamp the life and story out of their surrounding characters. Yeah. Let's move on to the elephant.
All right. Well, the elephant in the room is Ray from the most recent Star Wars trilogy, who, man, is. I've heard so many
Complicated
things.
subject.
Yeah, I've heard so many things over the years that, and I guess just for point of reference, it'll be Gabe and I talking predominantly because Alex hasn't kept up with it.
She's been spared.
Yeah, she's been
Listen,
spared.
I watched The Force Awakens. I haven't seen the other two, and I'm not planning on watching them.
I mean, you
That's
can weigh
actually
in
a
on
very
when we
smart
talk
move.
about. Yeah, you can weigh in on when we talk about The Force Awakens.
When did it come out? Like
To
2017?
2015.
25th? Okay, yeah, I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Go on, go ahead. I'll
Okay.
be here.
So Ray is. I don't think we really need to give that much background information on Ray, but Ray is basically the center of of the sequel trilogy, and being that it already hasn't set her up for much success because so much mystery has gone into like her backstory, into like where she came from, how did she come to be on Jakku and all that. And suddenly, as at least within the Force Awakens, so few of it has rarely been answered, but so much of it has just been Rey basically showing off a whole list of characteristics that we don't really get an explanation for. So like she's learned how to pilot the Millennium Falcon in what, like a couple minutes worth of screen time, but how in the hell did she learn how to pilot in the first place? One of
Yeah.
the
And
question is how is it that, just there were so many questions that I had, at least. So like, how is it that she ended up on Jakku in the first place? Eventually that would get explained later. How is it that she was able to master the Force? Like, how is it that she was able to tap into it so quickly? Why is it that when you know what, never mind, I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, Gabe, I'll let you.
there's Rey in The Force Awakens at least is sort of complicated for me because I I think I think that first film is less Sui than I think it gets a reputation for. I think it has a lot to its credit that it fucks up by the third film, definitely. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what I will say for The Force Awakens in terms of like going against this argument is that the supporting cast of characters are predominantly allowed to be characters. Finn and Poe, but are both like unique in their skill set. Finn is like a stormtrooper who turns against the space Nazis, the First Order.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, and Poe is like an expert pilot. So they have interesting skill sets and they have interesting roles to play in the world. And you do see some of that in the first movie, I think. So that's sort of a point to its credit.
Yeah.
And there's also like I think for me, as far as explanations go, I don't know that explaining uh, a Mary Sue's like massive skills could can really change that. Like I feel like regardless of whether or not it's explained away, if a character in a story like when Ray shows up in the first movie, I can buy the her like being an expert technician. That's pretty easy to that's a pretty easy sell for me because
Mm-hmm.
she's like a scavenger. She spends all day working on ships and stuff and taking apart ships. And to that extent, I can wrap my head around her being a decent pilot. That's enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
then later
naturally
on,
you would think like, okay, so she's probably figured out how all these parts work or something, right? Like if she has
and
taken
then
the
like
time to research it, then yeah, she probably yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, and then like later on, she's like a lot of people have given that movie guff for her being like an expert lightsaber fighter or her mastery of the Force. For the lightsaber, I feel like I mean lightsabers like there's like lots of lore behind them, but they're just glow sticks. They're just big glow sticks. It's not. I don't think it's that complicated.
Yeah, I don't think
um,
like I think without diving too much into the lore because I don't want to be
I don't
one
know
of
shit
those
about the
Star
lore.
Wars fans. Like I always thought like, as long as if there was some kind of specialty trait to holding and mastering a lightsaber, then that would just cause a lot more questions. But
Yeah,
ultimately,
and
it's fine seeing lightsaber sequences in the movies anyway. I don't really care who's holding it as long as it makes for a compelling watch, right?
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but we see Rey fighting with like her staff before she gets the
yeah,
lightsaber too, right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So if,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's like established melee combat in her skill set.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's not exactly the same, but
which
if you can
And
swing
also
one stick around, why can't you swing another?
true.
yeah, and then like with the Force, I feel like that one was a little harder for me to sell, but I felt like when I was watching the movie, I was like, okay, she's existed in the Star Wars universe. She's probably heard like stories of the Jedi, and when she figured out she was Force sensitive, she tried to test out something that she heard in a story. I can buy all that, but the thing is, it's not any one of these individual things that are happening because these can all be explained away. But
Yeah.
it's the fact that she is the technician, the pilot, the force user, the fighter, uh, doing all of those things that has I think that's what makes it a problem and that's what has long term consequences
Mm-hmm.
because later on you see stuff like characters who might be in the brawler position or the pilot position like Finn and Poe, they don't really have much to do because there is already a master pilot and a master brawler in the protagonist. Whereas
Yeah.
like in a more organic Star Wars story, you might have a brawler archetype, like a rough and rowdy archetype, like a Han Solo. Then you'd have the Jedi character like Luke. And
Mm-hmm.
Luke cannot like in I feel like a lot of people have jumped to calling Luke a Mary Sue, but I don't think so. Like in none of the movies except for the very last one can Luke fight. He's like a wimpy kid. He can't do shit in the first movie, and in the second movie he can barely fight stormtroopers and then loses to Darth Vader at the end of it. And then finally in the third movie he can fight a little bit, but he's not a scrapper and he's not a technician either. You have all of these little skills that are wrapped in this tapestry of fictional skill sets in this universe that these characters each fulfill, and they can organically interact with each other and talk to each other, and you can have scenes where maybe like that's why the second movie is so good. You have by the second movie I mean Empire. You separate the characters and see what happens. You separate Luke from his best friend and from his wiser, he doesn't know sister
Yeah.
Leia, and you have him basically stuck on the swamp planet with Yoda, who he doesn't have the wisdom of Leia to really go about, and he doesn't have the whip cracking remarks of Han Solo to really combat against when Yoda like um has one over on him like intellectually. So you basically just have this wimpy character who has to learn, and meanwhile you have Han and Leia who are off doing their own thing, and they don't have the emotional core of their team with them. So
Yeah.
you can have stuff like that, but when in what's the third movie called again of the new ones, the Rise of
Skywalker.
Skywalker, when Rey is separated from the rest of the cast, I don't really feel like anything's missing because all of the roles that they could potentially fill for a story in this fictional universe, they already fill, and all of the roles that Finn and Poe would fill, Rey can also fill. So there's nothing really like missing for either of them.
Could I add
You know?
on to that then?
Yeah, go for it.
Because at that point I had known that, like, you bring up a good, like, you really do establish a good point that, like, yeah, she seems to be kind of like the best of all trades kind of character at that point, and because of that, I felt almost no danger when she was on her own.
Yeah.
Like, I knew like any time she would appear on screen that she was gonna make it out absolutely okay. Like maybe get like near shot at best, but even then, like she has very good reflexes for a fighter. She has a lot of intelligence from, I guess, just like everything that she's learned so far, and on top of being able to master the Force, fight with a lightsaber and use weapons or like use blasters at that point, like I knew she was fine. Like she was basically a walking tank, which, for some people that might be enjoyable, but for someone like me who enjoys compelling protagonists, there wasn't any sense of danger or security. Like I didn't know, like you could have thrown the entire universe at her at any point, and I felt like she was going to be absolutely okay.
And they do.
Yeah.
Comically so. They literally at the end of the last movie they throw like they just honestly that third movie is just ridiculous to me. They throw
Mm-hmm.
like they're just like, okay, let's fill the screen with as many bad guy spaceships as we possibly can, and then that's what Rey has to go up against. And I felt no like, oh man, oh is she gonna do it? Is she gonna be the villain?
Yeah. Which that would have been hella interesting from a narrative perspective, but you gotta Mary
And like
Sue's gotta rise up and be the hero somehow, right?
and that movie like it almost hilariously teases the idea of Rey turning evil at one point. Like I don't know what the point of that whole sequence was because it definitely didn't convince me that there was any evil potential in her character. She never had any like.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same reason why I found it so hard. I'm gonna spoil Game of Thrones here if anyone cares. Uh, that's why I found it so hard to believe that Daenerys's turn to evil at the end of Game of Thrones because
Weren't there just a
like
lot of issues with like that final season in general though?
that last scene's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Um, but I found it so difficult to buy into that because throughout the like, and they hilariously at the beginning of the episode try to play clips of her that sound like foreshadowing for evil, but they're really just taken out, like the voice clips taken out of context that don't mean anything in the scenes that they were actually in, and it just felt very forced to try to have this character who has been nothing but like a paragon throughout the entire series just
It's literally
violently
because
turn evil for no
Yeah.
they
reason.
didn't try to set that up
Yeah.
until like the last season. Like you had 8 seasons to build up this, to like use foreshadowing. They didn't start it until they started writing the 8th season. They're like, what if we made Daenerys the antagonist? And then they were like, and then that's what they did. They didn't plan it.
I have a whole
Yeah.
laundry list of issues with the last season, but I'm not going to get into any of them because none of them apply to the topic of this conversation.
We could do a whole Game of Thrones a whole
It's
Game
true.
of
That's
Thrones
very true.
episode later. But Alex, while you're with us again, I wanted to ask, because I've heard about this through, I think, in my research of the topic. I've seen a few people label Bella from Twilight as a Mary Sue too. Do you have any opinions on that?
Well, I can see why, because Bella's kind of a bland character, and she's definitely a self-insert character.
Mm-hmm.
And she definitely has the whole like everyone praises her constantly. Like everyone's like, "Oh, you're so pretty. How do you not know you're pretty?" And "Oh, wow, you're so smart." But I would not describe her as a flawless character. One, because she's like I mean, the whole relationship with Edward is just like, girl, the amount of red flags in that man, and you decided to date him anyway,
I
to
like
like
watching you
one of
sleep.
her. But it's like, okay, you know that anime trope that's called like clumsy is sexy?
Oh yeah.
Bella is like the epitome of that trope. I like she's not an anime character obviously, but like she's so
Can you imagine?
clumsy, she's always tripping over things. She like cuts her finger open all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gets
like
herself
it
into danger
plays,
quite a lot.
yeah, she does. She gets in like I think a couple times she's called like a danger magnet, and like I mean we could talk about all of New Moon, um because she's literally actively putting herself in danger in that book in order to get um like the adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
And so because like she has a lot of flaws that are like important to the story and add to it, I personally wouldn't describe her as a Mary Sue.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand why people do.
That's actually a good point because yeah, I don't think I ever once like. I mean, I acknowledge that the writing was terrible, but I don't think I ever once in those movies went like, "Oh man, Bella, you did something stupid. That's so out of character for you."
Yeah. Ultimately
Yeah,
though, like,
it's not. She is not the brightest.
yeah. Ultimately, yeah, um I think ultimately, yeah, it's the flaws that help kind of define like if a character is a Mary Sue or not. And
Yeah.
speaking of like what I know this is a weird segue, but kind of bear with me. But one of the topics that I wanted to address about the Mary Sue trope is that it's almost commonly addressed to a strong woman character or just a woman character in general, especially female protagonists, um, which can be pretty bothersome because I know that not every single female protagonist is a Mary Sue. So that's basically made the term kind of sexist when you're talking about when you're talking about given characters. Like I know that there was a lot of uproar when Captain Marvel dropped as a movie, and um I think at some point, I don't know where, but there have been people who were like, oh my god, Brie Larson, Captain Marvel's a Mary Sue or something, and I'm like, hmm,
It's Kate. No,
why?
this was actually something I wanted to bring up when you told us we were doing this topic. And that's it's one of those phrases that's been thrown around a lot to the
Hmm.
point that I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people aren't really certain what it means, or like aren't like 100% positive what it means.
I
So
agree, yeah.
then for a lot of like especially for men, a lot of people will see like a female character that they don't like and be like, "Oh, she's a Mary Sue, so obviously it's terribly written."
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was bringing up with the Captain Marvel example, because I know a lot of people did not like that movie, and I don't understand because I guess I'm part of the few that did. Like, it's not my favorite by any means, but it's certainly like Brie Larson is pretty cool as Captain Marvel.
I didn't love it, but my lack of like um what would the word be? Excitement for the Marvel franchise in general has like I've made no attempt to hide that. So it's not really a product of anything that's in the movie. I just didn't. I don't. I didn't find the movie like interesting.
It just
Yeah.
fit the Marvel formula too well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh huh.
Yeah, see, I haven't actually watched the movie, but I saw like a lot of reviews from women, and a lot of them seem to say like it was very much a movie made for women. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of men wouldn't be able to like relate to the
Yeah.
character or like the plot lines or anything
Yeah.
And
as well.
I can understand. I'm not going to call it a bad movie. I can understand that it probably just didn't appeal to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like there's always going to be like certain things that are just not made for you, and as a result
Yeah.
you're not going to get it. Again, I haven't actually seen the movie, so I can't really give my 2 cents on that, but that's what I've seen other people say about it.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah.
Like,
I think there's definitely a big difference between something like being objectively bad and then something like there's just some movies that aren't for everybody. Some movies are written for like a specific demographic. And if you aren't a part of that demographic, you might not get it. And that's fine.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that's the whole thing too with like, with female characters in general. Because another movie that I wanted to touch on regarding the subjects on, men using the term Mary Sue to shit all over female characters is Birds of Prey. I
I heard
think,
that a lot with Birds of Prey. I didn't even
yeah,
get that. I didn't even get that one at all. I really liked that movie.
yeah,
So I didn't
Birds of
even
Prey
that
was
one
like
made no sense to me.
super fun. Like Birds of Prey was hella fun. Like, um, obviously it probably might have been a movie that was aimed more towards women anyway because there was a lot of like, I don't know. It was a strong female cast and they all did really well. And if it was, I don't want to say if it was, if it was written for a certain demographic, but if it was, it certainly did a really good job of it. And I
Yeah, I
knew,
haven't I haven't heard a single woman who watched that movie say they disliked it.
yeah, I know a
Yeah.
lot of women loved that movie, and there were some, shithead men who were like, "Oh my god," like, these characters are all so perfect or something. It's like, they were finding like things to complain about the movie and stuff. And I don't know directly if they were calling any of the characters Mary Sue specifically, but there
I
wouldn't
think
be any
the
grounds for any
controversy
argument for it
I think the
anyway.
controversy with the Captain Marvel is, or are we talking about Birds of Prey? Never mind. Forget to say anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, there wouldn't be any grounds to calling any of the
No.
women in Birds of
Yeah,
Prey
I'm
Mary
like
Sue's.
again, a movie I haven't seen. It's on my list. I actually really want to watch it, but I haven't actually seen it. But I'm still just like, based on what I know about it, like I don't think you could call any of the characters in it Mary Sue's.
Yeah.
No, it does the exact opposite thing of what I was talking about with Star Wars. Like it's a group of characters who each have like varying personality traits and skill sets who admittedly but only by the end of the movie, but still like they like complement each other and interact with each other in dynamic and interesting ways. And there's no one character who like possesses all the skills and like pros of the others without any cons. Like every character has got legitimate flaws and every character has like assets and I don't know, it's definitely not a Mary Sue. That was a I don't get that at
Yeah,
all.
if
Like
anyone
how people
was
call it that.
yeah, if anyone was basing any kind of argument on the writing and saying just the Mary, like, yeah, if anyone out there is thinking that any of the characters in Birds of Prey, just Birds of Prey that were thinking, that they were all Mary Sue's, fuck you.
Yeah, what are you
Just
even talking about?
yeah. And that goes with
I
like,
think that's the problem though, because it's as much as I don't want to change my mind on Star Wars. I feel like the problem is that you've had that like the conversation surrounding Rey has led to just collective brain damage regarding this issue, and a bunch of people who have just come under the impression that if a movie has a female lead, that it's a Mary Sue. Like,
yeah. And see, like, that's a good segue into the next topic that I wanted to talk about actually, is because in at one point or another, or maybe with our current projects or with previous stories, we have written in at least a female character. And if not, she has been the protagonist. And I can speak from experience because Porter is the female protagonist of my book. Um again, to bring up the Diamond Dagger, Alahe is the main protagonist of that one, and Nova is the main protagonist of your story. Oh wait, no, is Nova female? Gabe?
Nova's female, but Nova
Yeah.
is not a main protagonist. She's a side character.
Okay, so then it is still a pretty important character in the narrative anyway. So, how is it that after learning what we know about Mary Sue's from respective media, like how has that kind of impacted how we write our own characters? And I can start by saying that it definitely has. I've said before on podcasts that I've really wanted to nail writing Porter like perfectly, but not so flawlessly. Like I wanted to make sure that her flaws were evident, and I guess to kind of stake what they are right now just in case I forget or something, and I have this as a reference. Porter is a very anxious character. She thinks to herself quite a lot, as expressed through my writing of it, hopefully, and she is very, very loyal to the people that she values as, I guess, the people who saved her life. She's willing, or like she has cost herself a lot in her past, and it is because of those people that she feels indebted to. And while I haven't really expressed that a whole lot yet, she definitely does have a weakness when it comes to the relationships that she has. So that means it's open to exploitation from antagonists or probably to her own self, right? Like she, and that's just focusing on the whole Mary Sue's don't have any flaws thing. But in terms of her being the center of the universe, I definitely don't want it to be that way. It might start off initially when it comes to me building the series, but in this first book, that's one thing that I'm hopefully trying to work around. Like I don't want Porter to be like the center of this whole narrative. Like she so far isn't. Like I have a decent workaround to make sure that she isn't the center of the universe. And honestly, that would probably be my I would honestly be pretty upset with myself if I realized that Porter had like become a Mary Sue, because I don't want I've stated before that I want Porter to be a very good like role model for future book protagonists, and as a good inspiration, and to show that like you know we can write in good female characters without any of the sexism and you know previous shitty ways that men have written in women characters, especially like female LGBTQ plus characters, which is what Porter is. So
Yeah.
I've been trying to be super careful to hopefully make sure that she isn't a Mary Sue, because that's one of the last few things that I would want. And it's important for me too because I am a man, right? So it's easy for me to, I guess, initially maybe not recognize it. So it's good that I have a good, I have plenty of female voices that would hopefully tell me what I'm doing wrong or not. And so far I'm doing okay. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
Alex, how about you? How is learning more about the Mary Sue trope impacted how you write in either Aleje or other female led characters or other female protagonists or just female
Yeah.
characters in general?
Yeah. Yeah. As a woman, I hate calling myself that, but whatever. But like I tend to write mostly like female protagonists, just because that's what most of my characters end up being. So his actually an interesting character because she started out like she's like a really old character. We've talked about this before. She's been around for more than a decade. And she started out literally as like a flawless self-insert character, where I was just like, I wanted her to be a really cool vampire, and I wanted her to have like super strength and super speed and all these cool abilities. Like she could read minds, and she was like had impenetrable skin. Um, very, very Twilight vampire, but then I like pushed it to like the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she kind of had the whole like edgy personality where she's like, oh, I have a mysterious past, no one knows anything about me but everyone respects me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I stopped being 12 and was like, wow, that's actually not an interesting character to read about. And so I toned down the vampire powers, and then I went back before the vampirism and started like working on the story from there. And so Adaha actually is like in the Diamond Dagger, she's a very pessimistic character. Like she kind of like doesn't hope easily. She's kind of like the kind of person who has been stuck in a bad situation for so long that she kind of doesn't really see an opportunity to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even when she's like presented with one, she yeah, she's very slow to trust people. Like when she meets new people, she is very hesitant to trust them. She always assumes that people have bad intentions. That's one of her big flaws. And again, yeah, she's very pessimistic. She's like weirdly aggressive sometimes. Because again, she assumes people have bad intentions. So if someone says something wrong or like moves a little weird, she'll get really aggressive with them, which in turn is very off-putting to other people who are trying to like talk to her. But and then it's something that she has to work to overcome all those things and
Mm-hmm.
become a better person. But it's definitely something I've struggled a lot with because again, a lot of my like early like actual sitting down writing out full stories was in the fan fiction community, and like I never wrote like self inserts in fan fiction because I was never into that kind of stuff. um but it's still like that kind of mindset really influenced my writing, I think. And a lot of my like main characters and stories have started out very self-inserty, very flawless,
Mm-hmm.
very Mary Sue. And so it's something I've had to like actively work to combat in my writing.
If I may ask, what has that been like then? Like, what's it been like moving away from like very flawless characters into more rounded characters? Isn't because Alahis sounds very or pretty well rounded at this point. So
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I've had to really figure out like what personality traits for her like make sense from her situation, and from like the environment she raised in, and then also for the story that she goes through. Like if she's not very trusting of people, this was actually a big struggle I had with trying to figure out how to write the Diamond Dagger, was because she's actually like pretty much always been like very like untrusting of people. And so one of my big struggles was trying to figure out how to have a group of people that she can travel with in the story. Because, like I said, if you have a Mary Sue character that takes over all the roles, it makes the story a lot less interesting. Like,
mm-hmm.
stories are interesting because there's multiple characters that can like bounce off each other. And
Yeah,
so that gave me a hard time, was trying to figure out the right group of people for her to travel with, to give her people to like interact with and bounce off of.
yeah, it's hard
um
to, or it's definitely like an interesting thing developing foils,
mhm.
which you guys are familiar with what a foil is, but like yeah, like foil, like having a good foil character for me at least has been, and I'll get back to your input in a second, but for me, it's been pivotal to make sure that Porter doesn't become a Mary Sue. Like she needs to have someone that I don't want to say thing. I don't want to say like complements her energy, but it's something that works well with what she is, and that is definitely, or at least I'm hoping it's Magna, who I've stated in previous episodes before. If they like, if it were a top bottom relationship, Porter's a top or switch, and Magna's 100% a bottom. But like like it's definitely important for me to understand that foil in a relationship in general. So like what makes them so interesting, because then it doesn't feel, or because then my main point would be that Porter isn't alone, and suddenly it doesn't feel like I have to write in that she is going at it alone for at least
Mm.
this point in the story, and it doesn't feel like I suddenly have to place all the responsibility on her. Like it's a lot more, there's a lot more tension, I think, when it's two best friends trying to save the world rather than just a single person, right? Because even then two people could fuck up. But
Yeah. And
yeah.
that's also gonna like test the relationship too, which is always like exploring relationship dynamics and how they like change under pressure and stuff is
Oh yeah.
really, really interesting part of story writing.
Yeah. Have you ever had to deal with that then with any of Alej's companions or travel partners?
Yeah. Well, at this point, her travel companions are still fairly underdeveloped as characters because I haven't had time to like sit down and plan them out since, everything's been happening this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there are two characters. One of them, like from the village, Samana and Sanara, they're sisters, and they have really interesting relationships both with each other and with Arahe. In that Samana for a long time is like the only person that Arahe feels she can really trust, the only person she can really like talk to and express her concerns to. Um,
Yeah.
and then because of the events that happen in the Diamond Dagger, after that, the relationship becomes really, really tense. Um, and Arahe ends up becoming really good friends with Samana's sister, Sanara, instead. Um, and even though they'd previously had a really tense relationship, so they kind like the sisters kind of like switch, um, which puts a lot of tension on their relationship as well. Like things
Mm-hmm.
get really messy really fast. But I really like exploring the relationship dynamic between the three of them because it's yeah, a lot happens, a lot changes them,
Yeah.
because they're in like high tension situations.
I think that's what's important. Yeah. Like how does interacting with people especially change a character? Because on top of on top of a good character having like not like a whole list of flaws, but like enough to kind of help the story, like definitely like how they interact with characters is also important, right? And um Gabe, on that, when you've written in female characters, like how is it that you've learned, how am I trying to phrase this properly? Like how is it that when you're writing female characters, like how is it like your knowledge of the Mary Sue, like how has that changed how you write
Um,
in female characters? Because as a man you would have your own approach to it, right? Or like you would probably need to be a little bit more aware.
yeah. I think I haven't really talked about Glass Inferno a lot on the podcast because it's sort of like a project that I have on the back burner. But my protagonist in Glass Inferno is a woman, and I think when I started writing that, I would say she was definitely more of like a Mary Sue. She was like this awesome badass magic user who was also had like demon powers, and it was a master sword fighter. And I think the more that I sort of learned about writing characters, I decided like, okay, I can't fucking do that. That would be dog shit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, so I think how much I say this? It's definitely influenced my writing in that it's changed like how I approach not just the protagonist, but how I approach like side characters as well. Because I've tried to expand on like the side characters in this universe and try to keep them involved with the plot, because that's something that I think I definitely struggle with, is like giving my side characters something to do in the story as the story progresses and like goes towards the climax. Because I think in a lot of my early in my early writing, which I don't unfortunately have access to now, so I can't really reference it. But in a lot of my like writing as a kid, a lot of my stories would have a large cast of characters who would slowly just drift into obscurity as the plot went closer to the climax, as and the protagonist just became the one doing everything.
Yeah.
And I've definitely tried to avoid that more.
Mm-hmm. How long has it been actually since you had worked on Glass Inferno?
Oh, it's been a while. It definitely not since the semester started. Because I've mostly been working on my workshop story,
Yeah.
Lemon Heart. But
Mm-hmm.
I tried working on it a lot over the summer, and I still haven't submitted anything to the Discord. I will one day, but
Yeah, because this is the first time
Mood.
this is the first time I'm ever hearing of it.
I've mentioned characters from it on the podcast before. I think
I think
during
so, yeah.
our whole character thing, I mentioned Bloodvist, not
Oh yeah,
Bloodvist,
you did. Yeah, yeah.
the
Okay.
the Naked Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Um,
Okay, that all right.
so I think it's definitely influenced how I approach writing protagonists and trying to give protagonists like flaws to fight for. Because originally, um, Glass Inferno was just a blatant Avatar ripoff.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
but
mean, it's a good story to rip off.
as Ruby has proved.
Yeah.
Um, uh, no, but
Ouch.
Glass Inferno in its current state, the story is about this woman Naomi who who is like trying to become the most powerful of like magic users
Mm-hmm.
in this world. Except there's uh the fact that she is one of the few people in this universe who can't do magic of any kind.
Ooh,
So her plan is essentially just to punch
conflict.
her way to the top against
Spicy.
magic users.
Yeah. So like to be specific about it, like how is it like have there been any recent changes to how you've been developing Naomi?
There's definitely been a lot of recent changes. I think I like recently in a lot of drafts of it, like since the summer, I've made a pretty drastic change to like her involvement in the world and where the story would start out for her. Because originally, um, and this part hasn't changed, but originally she's like a part of a military unit,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I've changed that to incorporate some more of the demonic elements because there's a lot of occult shit happening. So I've tried to incorporate that into her backstory instead of the magic stuff.
Definitely
Love
adds a lot to
occult
the
shit.
backstory, yeah.
Hmm.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially she's a part of an experimental unit in this military group who deal with like like massive political magic threats. Um, they're called the Devil Unit, and they have a
Mm-hmm.
very specific form of magic that isn't really considered magic by the rest of the world, which is um,
Cutting people's
which,
heads off.
no, which is devil magic, which is like
Uh-huh.
demonic magic. Um, and so her unit, she's a part of the experimental unit, so she doesn't have magic, but she has devil abilities, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole dynamic of her unit is that they have the devil user who is a magic user who has a devil contract, I
Mm-hmm.
guess you could say. And then they have their devil executioner who is sort of their partner who goes with them in the field, and their whole role is to kill them if they get too powerful or go out of control.
Damn.
Nice. That's a good consequence.
Yeah.
Damn, why aren't we reading this story, Gabe?
I haven't. I want. I've gone over the first chapter so many times in so many iterations, and I just every time I think I'm happy with it, I think of something else and I have to change it completely because I need
Oh
this one to
man.
be. I need it to be perfect, or
Yeah.
else I'm gonna lose my mind.
See, it's funny you say that because next week, we're gonna be, or I'm gonna schedule in, um, I'm gonna schedule in an episode on when we talk about our personal writing anxieties.
All right, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. By next week, I will submit. Like, I will try to submit the first chapter.
Do you want me to hold you against that, or hold you to that?
Probably not. I have
Okay.
a test and 3 essays to write in that time.
All right, then yeah,
So
don't do that. Just
Gabe,
dude.
I was gonna say I'd love to promise that I could submit a chapter of Diamond Dagger to the group by then, but like man, I still have like 15 assignments due this month, so
Okay.
that's not happening
Okay,
before
how about this?
December.
When the semester on the end date of the semester, I will submit something to the Discord chat of Less Inferno.
Okay. Um
And you can hold me to that because I can do stuff by then.
yes, will do. Okay. If anyone needed a reminder that we're all university students, this is it. But yeah, so I'll do the same. I'll upload as much, or I'll upload like a few more recent chapters of Xeno to our Discord. But anyway, let's get back on topic. I guess overall, and this is something you guys can weigh in, but it's more of just like a closing thought. Given our discussion with Mary Sue's, I think my main takeaway is that you can have strong female characters, which is in itself like a whole other conversation, I think. You
Yep.
can have strong protagonists, but the second that they become a Mary Sue, or at least like where it's not being blatantly sexist, just it kills the story, I think. Or it like
Mhm.
it kind of kills the tension of your thing, because especially in a fantasy story, and I've said this, like Gabe, you've heard me say this to someone in the creative writing class, that your main character is a very pivotal perspective of the fantasy world. Like it shouldn't revolve around it, but it definitely is, like, it definitely is the one that you chose to pick, right? Out of everyone in that world that you've built, their perspective is the one that's the most interesting to you. However, just because you're doing that does not exclude any of the flaws that that character has, right? Like you have to be mindful of that, because when you're writing in a character, there are things that's wrong with them, and those things will like ultimately affect the relationship that they have with themselves, with other people, with action scenes, dialogue, all that stuff, right? Like don't ignore that. Like be I've said this before, but like be mindful of the shit that you're writing.
Also,
Mhm.
embrace the flaws. They make the story more interesting.
Yeah, like embrace the fact that people come in all different kinds of personality types, right? Like embrace the fact that like some people are anxious are anxious before fight scenes or something. Embrace the fact that like some characters over worry. Embrace um a lot of like troubleness that they might have had. Like embrace the fact that maybe they might not be as trusting, right? Like, because not only is that a key element to your story, but ultimately it just helps round them out better, right? Like, no one really should be perfect in that regard, because I don't know, perfect people are boring.
Yep.
Mhm.
Like, it's fun hanging out with people that have gone like I don't want to say and sound like I'm fucked up, but like it's fun learning about people and what they've gone through, and especially through characters. It's fun learning that this character that has gone through so much is now the one saving the world, right? Or it's the one saving their city or something. Like a person is, or like a character with plenty of flaws and plenty of good things to them still, that makes for a compelling story overall, not just for a compelling character, but a compelling story. So yeah, don't write in Mary Sue's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't be a thing, and don't be a dick and be sexist about every female protagonist that comes your way, because there are a lot of good female protagonists and you're just a shithead. But
One last piece of advice though, don't um make the mistake of trying to actively not write a Mary Sue and then write the jerk stew or the
mm,
jerk Sue. If anyone listening is unfamiliar with that, look up a jerk Sue. It's basically just a Mary Sue with an attitude.
yeah, don't don't write in any variations of the Mary Sue either. And like there is, you know, the male versions of it, so like Marty Stew or Gary Stew or whatever, that's still a flawless character. and
Yeah.
we know better, or at least the three of us do. Right? And there are plenty of us, and there are plenty of other writers that know what the fuck you're doing. So we're watching you.
Yeah, I think it's just something that as a writer you have to be constantly mindful of,
Mhm.
and like pay attention. Like pay attention to the things you're writing. Like think about, like, try and put yourself in the perspective of someone else. Look at what your characters are actually doing and like take notes of it and think about it a lot.
Mhm. Like,
I mean, don't think about it too much because then you'll do what I do and wake up at 3 in the morning going, oh my God, I need to write stuff now. But like, think about it. Think about what you're writing. Be mindful of the things you're writing. That's my advice on this.
it's good advice. And I think with that, we'll wrap it up for tonight. So, thanks for listening, everybody. It has been episode 20 overall of the Ink Guild, and it's been, episode 8 currently of the season. So, thank you all for tuning in. If you've been tuning in since episode 1, holy shit, like, please contact us. That'd be amazing. But anyway, yeah, thanks for listening in again, everyone. You can find all of our social media, both for the Ink Guild and individually, down below in the description. As well, thank you to pretty much everyone who puts an effort into these things. Like, thank you to you guys who listen in. Thanks to Alex and Gabe for always, having a conversation with me, even though we're all students drowning in homework. Thank you to, thanks to the music that we use. Thank you for not striking us. That's very beneficial for us. Thank you so much. And, yeah, I guess as a final little package, let's create a Mary Sue. What do we think?
What?
So in
I'm
previous,
Mary Sue.
yeah. So in the episode that I did with Gabe on Cosmic Horror, which you can find on our channel, make sure to look it up. It's Cosmic Horror. We created a cosmic horror creature, and with this one, we are going to build ourselves a Mary Sue. So a character that has a whole bunch of Mary Sue traits.
Okay. First and foremost, they have to exist in a previously established universe. That's the easiest. That's the Mary Sue speed run.
So which universe are we putting them in? I got you there.
What's a
One Direction in The Purge.
Oh my god. you wanted Directioner in The Purge. Oh my god. Okay.
Genre Dean, like.
Wait. What? I just looked this up. What?
It's an actual. Have we?
Why are there so many? Why are there so many?
How have we not had this conversation before? It's like a popular
Alex,
genre on Wattpad.
What is this? Oh my god, Jenny Nicholson has a video on it. What is this subgenre
She has
of One Direction?
I'm pretty sure she has at least 2 videos on it.
What is the subgenre of One Direction during the Purge, and why haven't I heard of it? And why can't I read all of them now and just download them into my brain?
Okay, never mind about building the Mary Sue thing. That's everyone's to read for tonight. Directioners in the that's everyone.
Go read about One Direction in the Purge.
Yeah,
Alex,
all right.
you've awakened me to something new and beautiful.
All right. Okay, no Mary Sue building. Yeah, no Mary Sue building. Just everyone look up Directioners in the Purge. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good night.
This is
Alex, we're doing an outro.
This is literally where you're gonna find all the fanfiction self-insert characters, okay?
Oh my god. I didn't realize this is a thing. Holy shit.
Harry! Oh my god, Harry Styles, I'm being bitten by a zombie. Oh no! You're being bitten by a zombie? Oh, well, I gotta do something about that, because I'm Harry Styles.
Have a good night, everyone.
Like. I can't do it. Good night.
Good night!
Have a good night, everybody.